Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today, as you can see, it's going to be Castlevania. And this Castlevania sounds a little bit different than what you're probably used to. This is the MS-DOS version of the game, released in 1990 and apparently converted by Unlimited Software Incorporated. That was a company that actually did a bunch of different ports back in the day. I've seen their name on other titles as well. I believe they also did the Commodore 64 and Commodore Amiga ports of the game as well, and they're all fairly similar to one another. Unfortunately, this is not really the best way to experience Castlevania, but as a huge Castlevania fan myself, it's a very interesting conversion to go back to. Unfortunately, IBM PC compatibles and MS-DOS games from that era weren't really known for smooth screen scrolling, and so this game exhibits the same kind of issue that a lot of early MS-DOS platformers exhibited, which was very choppy screen scrolling. So brace your eyeballs, because this is probably going to melt them. It's very hard to look at in this day and age as of recording this. But you know what's funny? I actually used to play this back in the mid-1990s. When my dad got his Pentium computer in probably 95 or 96, I was given the old IBM 286 or PC compatible 286 based system, and then a friend I think actually donated us a 386 based system as well, so I had those in my bedroom for a couple of years before getting a much better PC of my own in the late 90s. And so what I did is I would go on my dad's computer with the internet connection and download a bunch of games, and then transfer them over via 3.5-inch floppies, and then stuff like Golden Axe, the PC port of Golden Axe, Castlevania was another one, Lemmings and stuff like that. And so I actually played this version a lot back in the day, and used to use a quick shot joystick with it. It was super awkward, but I actually enjoyed this back in the day, especially with the ad-lib sound. So this does take advantage of the ad-lib sound card, or if you're like me and you've got a Sound Blaster based card, it's got ad-lib emulation, and it actually sounds kind of interesting in a lot of cases. The soundtrack isn't what I would call great compared to the NES game. Some tracks in particular sound way worse than others, but some of it's got this just like really high-pitched, twangy feel to it, and it just works. Like I really like the title screen theme in particular. So, but yeah, I actually played this back in the day, and we're revisiting it again for this Let's Play. Now, I've actually been practicing this over the last couple of days on Twitch, and it's taken me a little while to get the hang of the differences between it and the NES version of the game, coming up with brand new strategies that I'm not really used to using, because in the NES game you can take advantage of a lot of powerful sub-weapons and whatnot, and exploits. You don't really have the same kind of luxury in this game. Like, for instance, Holy Water has been nerfed quite a bit. When you use Holy Water on enemies, it doesn't stun them in place like it does the NES game, and so Holy Water is just, I'm not going to say completely useless in this game, but it's not really recommended that you stick by it. So my goal for this playthrough is to try to use the stopwatch for most of the playthrough. And if I die and I lose the stopwatch, then things will get pretty interesting, and you guys will see what I mean once we get into it. So, but yeah, that's going to be the goal. Go through the game with the stopwatch for the most part. Dracula is actually not as hard as he is in the NES version, his second form in particular, so I don't need the stopwatch at that point. And some of the boss patterns have also been changed. Their properties have been changed as well, so we're going to have to face the stage 3 and on bosses a little bit differently than we might in the NES version of the game. So, alright, well, before we jump into things as usual though, guys, I'd like to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers, so they're going to flash by the screen. Thank you guys for your continued support, and likewise with the recent live stream super chatters and channel members. If anyone's interested in supporting my channel via places like Patreon, links are in the description box below. Alright, so with that, let's go ahead and hit the enter key. And we're going to go ahead and select joystick here, and we have to calibrate our controller here. I'm actually using a Gravis PC gamepad. I actually picked one of these up a couple years ago, and finally got it cleaned up just this past week, and so I've finally been able to hook it up and use it. And it's a solid gamepad. The buttons are spaced pretty far apart compared to a normal console controller, but it gets the job done. Castlevania will recognize 2 buttons on your joystick or controller. And so we do have separate jump and attack keys. I'm guessing probably unlike the Amiga version of the game, where up is most likely tied to jump. So as you can see, so far it's pretty faithful. You jump in here, you've got your zombies and whatnot, you've got your candles, And you can see what I'm talking about, though, in regards to the choppy screen scrolling. Again, unfortunately, this was just something that was very common with early MS-DOS games. And it wasn't an issue that was really solved until about after this game. Commander Keen was one of the earliest, like, fairly smooth scrolling MS-DOS games. And I can't remember when Keen came out, the first Keen. I don't remember if it was around the same time as this or slightly after. I always thought Keen was 91, but it might be 90, come to think of it. I'm going to have to look that up, actually, after this. I actually do want to eventually come back and do some Commander Keen, either Let's Plays or live streams or something like that. Those are PC platforming classics, and I really feel like I owe it to myself to cover those on this channel. So yeah, I mean, like I said, this is a very choppy experience, but level design-wise, it's very faithful to the NES original. Unfortunately, I have tried some damage boosts and things like that, you know, a couple of speedrun tactics just for fun, and the one to boost yourself over onto that other platform and just skip this underground waterway is just, it doesn't work in this version. The gap is too large, but this money bag is still here. And I just used my stopwatch. You're going to see me relying on my stopwatch a lot in this playthrough. And if you're playing this game for yourself, I highly recommend doing the same thing. Fortunately, bosses seem to be weak to the same things as they are in the NES games. So the stopwatch will actually work on both the bat at the end of this level and the Medusa on stage 2. So again, my goal is to keep the stopwatch well, pretty much through the whole game, because it just makes the level so much easier. A couple of enemies later on in the game, like the Axe Armor Knights, are very, very difficult to deal with in this. The collision detection is unfortunately fairly terrible. They'll throw axes, you'll try to whip them, and your whip will just go right through them, and then the axes will hit you. So the idea is to just hold on to the stopwatch for the whole playthrough, including stage 5. You know, the Grim Reaper level, or Death's level. So you'll also notice some music differences. Like, you'll notice that there's no boss music. The only boss music in the game is actually the second form of Dracula. So we're not going to hear any normal boss music. Also, some of the stage music has been switched around. So I believe the stage 4 music is actually the stage, or the original Castlevania Stage 5 music is actually now on the Stage 4 in this game, which is kind of interesting. Also, some of the secrets have been changed around, so you still have this crown here that you can get, but one of the secrets later on in this game, oops, what am I doing? One of the secrets later on in this game is, in the NES version, a Loop 2 exclusive. So when you beat Castlevania on NES, you can go through the game a second time, which is a second, you could call it a second quest. I just call it a second loop of the game, and it's a little more difficult, a little bit trickier to get through, a little bit harder, but you also have some extra items that you can get, some extra secret treasures you can get on Loop 2 that you can't get in Loop 1. And interestingly, in this version, they take some of those Loop 2 treasures and place them on this Loop 1. Now, unfortunately, there is no Loop 2 in this game. So you just beat the game once, you enter your name on the high scoreboard. Yes, there is actually a high scoreboard in this game. And that's pretty much it. The game ends. So no Loop 2, unfortunately. You'll notice that I'm actually intentionally skipping a lot of candles here. It's because I found that some of the candle drops are fairly inconsistent. I've actually gotten daggers and whatnot out of candles that probably shouldn't have daggers. So I'm trying to play it really safe here. And one big issue with this game is because of the slow chop and the slow screen chop. Your controls are actually very, very laggy in this version. So, you know, jumping across that platform or jumping over that pit to face that knight head on is actually really dangerous, because he comes across the screen really quickly, just like in 4 or 5 clicks. He's just right in front of you, and he'll knock you off. So this right here is actually one of those areas where you can jump down here, and look, that's an item. That Moai head is an item that's only in Loop 2 on the NES Castlevania, but you can get it here in Loop 1 in this version of the game, which is interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and use the stopwatch again right here, just to make sure that Medusa heads don't start flying at me. And I'm going to try to use it again. We just used it again. We have to be really careful with this platforming here too, because again, everything is just super choppy in this version of the game. Let's wait for a Medusa head to come over here. Okay, I don't see one. Let's go ahead and go. You're going to notice that I'm going to be very, very careful with bats and Medusa heads in this game, because again, of how choppy everything is. Especially on stage 4. And so what I'm going to do here is actually use my stopwatch once more. It actually works perfectly here. So we're going to use the stopwatch and then just run past everything. And just got it, just barely. So there is holy water there, but again, because holy water doesn't stun enemies in place, I don't want to use it on Medusa. If I was playing the NES version of the game, I would totally grab that holy water right there. Even though I could actually technically still use the stopwatch, because the stopwatch will freeze Medusa as well. That is a double shot right there for anyone that has never played Castlevania for some reason. That'll allow you to use 2 sub-weapons back to back, but we're probably not going to really take advantage of those in this playthrough pretty much at all, unless I die and I have to pick up a different sub-weapon. So just taking things relatively slow here, just killing these bone pillars with my whip. I don't want to waste my hearts. I don't think I'm going to need all these hearts for the boss fight. I'm probably only going to need about 3 or 4 uses of the stopwatch, if that. But I'd rather not waste my hearts if I can avoid it. So the Medusas and whatnot, they follow the same pattern as the NES game. They bob and weave up and down. If you notice that they're underneath you as you're walking, you can probably just walk right over them. I'm going to go ahead and use the stopwatch right now, just like so. Fortunately, the hitbox on your whip here is actually somewhat large in the game, kind of like the NES version of the game. You'll notice that there's a tiny gap between my whip and Medusa's head, yet it was still dealing damage to Medusa. So, you definitely want to take advantage of that when you're playing this game. Alright, good start so far, actually. Actually, quite a good start. We haven't died yet, which is nice, and the goal is to die as few times as possible, but there are quite a few parts in this game that are very tricky to deal with. Again, which is why I want to hopefully hold on to the stopwatch for most of the playthrough, because it means I can freeze most of the enemies I encounter in place. That is the idea. So, normally in the NES Castlevania, I wouldn't do that. I would grab the holy water, or I would grab a different projectile or something like that. But because the game here is so choppy, and enemies kind of like come at you relatively quickly because of the choppiness, it's, you know, you just want to take advantage of everything that you can. So there's also a health pickup right here, just like in the NES version, if I can get it. And enemies respawn very quickly in this game as well. So let's go ahead and just use the stopwatch right there. I don't want to take another hit. And I did just take another hit because of that skeleton. But man, look at how slow everything is here. It is very, very slow. One thing that's actually kind of interesting is that I did actually remove about half of the RAM in my system. So for anyone curious, I'm actually running this on an actual old PC. It's a Pentium 200 megahertz processor from the mid-1990s, and I have 128 megabytes of RAM in here. And I was getting, you know, I decided that I don't really want to run 3D games on this computer anymore, because I have a Windows 98 machine that's much more powerful, much more suitable to the job. And so anything Windows-based that's like polygonal that I want to play, I'm going to get a much better experience playing it on my Windows 98 machine, which is probably about 20 times more powerful than this machine. It's a beast. So I, you know, swapped out a couple things. I downgraded my RAM because I had 256 megabytes in here, and it was complete overkill for this system, considering I'm mainly just going to be doing old MS-DOS 2D based stuff. And even 128 megs is overkill as well. But I have 2 64 meg sticks in my PC right now, but I have to have both of them in for it to boot. Also, this secret no longer exists in this version. So in the NES game, you would come here and duck, and then a money bag would appear on the far left. But interestingly, when I was first practicing this game, I had all 256 megs of RAM in here. And now that I've got the RAM halved, the game is actually not running as quickly. So RAM seems to have had a performance on this game's speed. The gameplay is a little more manageable now. Before, it was definitely noticeably faster. Granted, I am running this within Windows. I'm not using MS-DOS. I am using Windows 95. And the way Windows 95 handles, you know, memory allocation and stuff like that could affect, you know, performance of games like these MS-DOS titles running within Windows 95. And so yeah, but basically the point of that rant is that, you know, there is a difference now between what I was dealing with earlier this week when I was first practicing, and it is kind of interesting. So we're getting close to the boss fight here, and again, I'm going to use my stopwatch. This is anything with platforming like this, with endless pits, is very dangerous in this game because of how choppy everything is and how fast the enemies move across the screen. I'm going to go ahead and just use my stopwatch again here because I can't use this on the mummies that are coming up. And there should be money right there. And there's just that. So one thing that's interesting about this game is to activate the bosses, you have to move all the way to the other side of the screen. Just like that. So you're actually kind of screwed in this version. You pretty much have to take damage. But I'm going to go ahead and just grab that health and just fight these guys head on. Normally I don't like fighting these guys head on in Castlevania. I like to use the upper platform trick, where you basically sit on the top left platform, which is something I actually explain in my How to Beat the Bosses of Castlevania video I actually uploaded earlier this month. I'll probably have a card on this video if you want to check that out. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. It's got a lot of really good tips and whatnot for the NES bosses of Castlevania. So. But yeah, it's really difficult to do that in this version of the game. Well, it's not so much that it's difficult, it's that it's a little more tedious because both mummies, they just go all the way across the screen and then they turn around and then go back the other way. Whereas in the NES version of the game, they kind of like meander back and forth randomly. And they have a tendency of trying to huddle towards you. And so what I'm going to do here is just wait for this bat. I definitely do not want to jump until this platform is near me. And I'm going to also use my stopwatch right here because I don't want to get hit by one of the gill men. And I don't want to grab that cross either, or that boomerang. And I don't want to grab that holy water. That is not supposed to be a holy water drop. But I'm pretty sure that came from a candle. I don't think I whacked an enemy and it dropped. I'm going to have to refer back to the footage actually because, you know, when I play games, things kind of happen. And sometimes I don't actually see exactly why they happened because my eyeballs are constantly going all over the place when I play these games. You know, analyzing all the situations on screen. Gonna go ahead and use the... And we died. So for some reason that jump has actually been made more difficult in this version of the game. You actually have less, you know, less time to jump. And there's the stopwatch again. The reason that death really isn't that big of a deal is because the stopwatch does appear right here. I'm going to wait for the bat and then jump. And that's going to be a tight jump. Use the stopwatch again. Now jump. You have to be, you know, Castlevania has always been a methodical game, but you have to be very, very methodical in this version of the game. If you're not, you're going to die very, very quickly. So I'm just taking my time here, just being very methodical. And I don't want to whack that candle because I don't want that power up. So I'm going to have to wait for the, I'm just going to have to wait for this platform to come back over. Let's just take our time. Get closer to the edge as well. And there we go, got it. Unfortunately, we only have 2 hearts. But, you know, this part in Castlevania, you're always fairly low on hearts in this part. You don't get a lot of ammunition here. And it's really difficult to hit a lot of these candles for ammunition. And I'm going to take a hit, and we're dead again. That's why you have to wait for the bats in this version of the game. I mean, you should wait for the bats in the original NES game as well, but it's extremely important to wait for them in this version specifically. And are we going to make it? Okay, we made it. Good. Let's see if I can save my my hearts here. Good. I was able to save them. So that means I'm going to be able to use the stopwatch twice in this next section. And if I can get another big heart, that'll let me use it 3 times. So it takes 5 hearts to use your stopwatch in Castlevania. And we're slowly building up to 15. Just look at how choppy everything is. It's just such a mess. Alright, we're just gonna wait. Gonna go ahead and just use it right now. Alright, good stuff. So I can use the stopwatch twice. Let's go ahead and use it once right here. Jump, just like so. Jump right here. Now we're going to wait for the bat. Unfortunately, you know, just like the NES version of the game, the bats will fly at the height that you are on the screen. So if you're on the ground floor, they'll fly at you near the ground level. If you jump towards, you know, the higher part of the ceiling, they'll come out at that higher part of the ceiling. And so that's exactly what happened. I jumped off that platform, the bat came out on the higher part of the screen. So what I'd like to do is actually not lose my stopwatch. So I need to be really careful if, you know, to make sure that enemies don't drop anything I don't want. This is an issue that can crop up in the original NES version of the game. So you have to be very careful in this section. And you notice that I'm just standing and whipping. You can do that in the NES version too. So it's not exclusive to this version of the game. So I actually see a lot of people playing Castlevania, and you know, they do what I did back in the day when I was a kid, and they try to duck and attack the flea men, or technically they're called hunchbacks in this old Castlevania. So these are bone dragons. I'm gonna just use my stopwatch when they're at their lowest, just like that, and then just kill them like so. Now if I can do the same to these next two, I'll be in good shape because I'll be able to get a lot of health back. I'll be able to have a full health bar going into the boss fight. That second candle, I believe, is still a dagger in this version, so I don't really want to mess around with that. And you can actually tell that you're doing damage to these guys based on a very, very faint sound effect, as well as a little marker appears on their heads when you make contact with them. So let me see if I can use it like that. Cool, that works perfectly. So he wasn't fully out yet, but I was still able to do damage to him. So I don't need the hearts either. They pretty much do nothing on this boss fight. Oh no, I lost the stopwatch. Great. That wasn't supposed to be a dagger. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Some of the candles seem to be randomized in this game. And you'll notice that I'm not even really trying to dodge here. You have a lot of invincibility frames when you take a hit, so I'm just trying to tank. But now, unfortunately, this upcoming level is going to be way more difficult than it needs to be, because I'm not going to have a stopwatch. And so the Axe Armor Knights are just going to be a major pain to deal with. So that could be a potential run killer right there by not having the stopwatch. That is how much of a pain these guys are to deal with in this game. Now, some of you that are just familiar with the NES game, that's it, will be saying, well, they're usually hard to deal with in the NES game too, but you have a lot of ways around them in the NES version of the game. For instance, the Holy Water, if you do a nice direct shot with Holy Water, kills them instantly. But I don't have that luxury in this one. Although I think I'm going to try to switch to Holy Water if I can. So there should be a Holy Water right there. Yep, just like in the NES version of the game. So a lot of item placement is pretty much still the same as the NES version, but other candles seem to be randomized, which is really odd. It's almost like candles are treated like enemy projectiles, where enemy projectiles and enemies themselves, they'll often drop items seemingly randomly. Now there might be rhythm or rhyme from like a speedrunner perspective, but to us filthy, dirty casuals, it's you know, it doesn't seem like there's any rhythm or rhyme to it. And so enemies can drop weapons, they can also drop money bags, they can drop small hearts, big hearts. It's just, you know, there's the whole gamut. Gamut? Never mind, just pretend I didn't say that. They drop a whole bunch of different things, and it feels like some of these candles are basically doing the exact same thing, where the candles are just completely random in terms of what they drop. So fortunately there is health coming up here, but look at that. My whip hit that hunchback, but it just went right through him. So that's some of the stuff I'm talking about in this version of the game that's just very frustrating to deal with. Alright, so this is where we first experienced the Axe Armor Knights. So I'm going to try to just throw Holy Water, and hopefully, okay, that's screwed up, man. So my Holy Water got stuck on that candle for some reason. And, yeah, in the NES version of the game, that would have actually gone through the candle. But look at how choppy those axes are going across the screen. very frustrating to deal with. If you try to attack the axes head on, a lot of times your whip will just go right through them. And if you guys hear extra background noise in the background, I really apologize for that. Apparently, my lawn service is starting to mow the lawn, which is something I unfortunately don't have any control over because I live in an apartment complex. Normally what I do is I actually try to record my Let's Plays on my days off, and I record them late at night so you guys don't hear any background noise. But I need to swap out PCs to do a very particular live stream, and so I need to disconnect this computer that we're using to do this Let's Play. And we're dead. I could have turned around. I was trying to turn around, but it wouldn't let me, which is very frustrating. So it looks like you can at least duck under these axes, which is good. And I'm going to try to just upgrade my whip here, like so. Come on, dude. There we go. But they throw the axes out really fast, too. So I destroyed that one axe, and another one came out immediately. And you know what? I think I might have actually just discovered the strategy for these guys, because it doesn't look like they're throwing the axes along the ground. So maybe these guys actually aren't as bad to deal with as I originally thought. Okay, so next time I see one of those guys, I'm just gonna duck, and that's it. And so look at that, guys. New strategies discovered during the Let's Play itself. That's always fun. Now these Axe Armor Knights, they are placed in slightly different locations in this version. So like that guy's not supposed to appear that quickly. And then there's another one that appears a little bit farther back, so he's not quite as close to you, or he doesn't spawn as close to you as he does in the NES version of the game. And you'll notice there I just took a hit from that axe, my whip went right through it, and that's exactly what I'm talking about with these Axe Armor Knights. Okay, so what I'm not going to do is go up to the top right there. There's actually a hidden double shot I can get. The last time I tried to get that, the game actually crashed on me. And since we're pretty far into this playthrough, I really don't want the game to crash out on me. So ideally, I'd rather just hold on to the axe right now. Either the axe or the boomerang. And, you know, for the Grim Reaper fight, or Death himself. So like this guy right here, he appears much farther back. He's supposed to appear much closer to you on the right-hand side. Alright, let's get this. Fortunately, we'll get some health back on the next screen, so it shouldn't be too bad. And this game really wants to give you the dagger. It must have watched my Vampire Master of Darkness playthrough last week. One thing that game does, for those of you guys that haven't watched that playthrough yet, is it gives you a dagger right before pretty much every boss fight in the game. And the dagger in that is a primary weapon. It's not a sub-weapon like it is in Castlevania. And it's significantly weaker than your, other attacks in the game. So I'm trying to debate what I want to do here. I think what I'm going to do is actually go with the boomerang. And I'm going to try to come up this way and try to hit these guys just like so. You'll notice that the red skeletons, they come back a lot faster in this version of the game too. But they do give you points if you want to try to grind out for extra lives. Speaking of extra lives, we actually just got one. So it makes a little bit of a jingle when you get an extra life. It's different from the NES games. And unfortunately I got hit by that axe. I really couldn't do anything about that. One difference between the boomerang in this and the NES version of the game is that it will actually cut through these guys on your very first hit. On the NES version of the game, there's a very neat mechanic where the boomerang will reflect off of them. And they come on the screen so fast and the axes just fly out right at you immediately that there's not really a whole lot I can do. So we're probably not going to beat the Grim Reaper here on our first try. But he does have a much simpler pattern in this version of the game. So he just flies across the screen like that, and then just rinse and repeat. So there's actually a possibility we might be able to defeat him. So I want to throw a boomerang up like that. When the Grim Reaper is at his lowest point there, you can actually just sit and whip him. You don't have to jump up at him or anything like that. And there we go. Wow, first try, barely any health. So fortunately, the Grim Reaper is a lot easier in this game. If he had the same kind of pattern that he did in the NES version, and he spawned 3 or 4 different sickles, that would be very, very frustrating to deal with. But fortunately, he doesn't do that. And now we're on the last level. And so this last level is really not all that fun in this version of the game. Again, the level design, for the most part, is fairly faithful to the NES game. Level structure-wise, enemy placement-wise, very close to the NES game with some minor deviations like we saw in that previous level. So just like in the NES game, you've pretty much got no ammunition here. But unlike the NES game, you don't have the luxury of just skipping past these guys with ease. Fortunately, they seem to appear higher up on the screen. So in the NES version, there was supposed to be a bat down below. And so I'm going to get this stopwatch here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use it because I only have 4 hearts. And this game has a money bag fetish, apparently. I'm going to see if I can just run past this guy. And no, we're going to end up dying. Can I duck? Oh, nice, I got it. Okay. Okay, very lucky. So that's actually really good. We ended up getting a checkpoint. NES Castlevania, that would have been a big heart. And I don't want that holy water. I'd rather have the stopwatch here. So unfortunately, this is going to be very, very close with only, you know, 1 hit and we're dead pretty much. Let's go ahead and use the stopwatch here. And I'm going to jump up here and attack him like that. And then I'm going to use the stopwatch again and immediately fall down. Oh, that was very, very close. Because I want this health right here. And we're just going to drop down like that. And we're going to have to actually jump up. This is an interesting sort of glitch here, and we died. This is going to be way harder now. So that part right there, you notice that there was a stairwell, and it kind of like, it went up to the right and then up to the left. And I was on the middle platform trying to go down the second part of it, and it wouldn't let me. So I kind of have to walk down from the top. It's very frustrating. But since I don't have the stopwatch, it's going to be a lot harder to do this. It's a very irritating part of the level. So what I'd rather do is just jump across like this, come on over here like that, and again, sort of walk down from up here, just like that. It's really awkward. It's very hard to explain how that works. It's just extremely awkward. And I don't really care if I take damage here, I just want to get to the checkpoint. And what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and just try to fight Dracula as is. So normally what I do is I would just kill myself and get all my health back. You do respawn at the bottom of that stairwell, just like in the NES version. But we'll see if we can do this with just 2 hits under our belt. So I want to make that holy water appear. I don't want it for Dracula's second form in this. I don't believe it stuns him in place, but it's not going to really matter. So just like in the NES version, ooh, that's not good. Just like in the NES version, what I want him to do is sort of wait for him to shoot his fireballs, and then jump over and attack. And I jumped from so far back that I ended up taking a hit. So let's go ahead and just walk up here and just do it all over again. So this is pretty much the very end of the game, assuming nothing crashes and nothing else happens. In the NES game, normally what I would do is grind out for hearts with the candles, and you can still do that. You can go down the stairs and come right back up and get yourself some more hearts. But with the sort of randomized nature of drops in this game, it doesn't work out quite as well. It's a little more time-consuming. And Dracula's second form is a lot easier, so it's not really a big deal. So what I like to do here is use my boomerang, kind of like so. Get a couple of extra hits like that. And like you can see, you definitely want to be a little bit closer to Dracula. If you try to jump from much farther back like I did earlier, you're not going to make it over his fireballs. Now, interestingly, if you somehow end up behind him, he can actually shoot his fireballs behind him. And there we go. This is his second form. So this jump attack right here, this is all he does. And in this version of the game, it goes high enough to where you can just walk right underneath it. So I wait for him to get to the other side of the screen like so, and then I just wait for him to jump, and then just walk right under, just like so. So fortunately, they did make some of the boss fights a little bit easier, so it's not as stress-inducing. If you're familiar with the game, the NES version of the game, it's, you know, fairly easy to figure out these patterns and then deal with them appropriately. And I say fortunately, normally I'm not one for like nerfing a game's challenge. I do like challenging games, and if a game is ported to another platform, I prefer it to be, you know, as faithful as possible. But given that this version of the game is as choppy as it is and as difficult to play as it is, I am completely okay with the nerfing of certain, you know, difficulty elements. Something I wanted to also mention is that you can actually jump backwards in this game. You can do that in the NES Castlevania as well, but it's really easy to do it in this one. In the NES version, it feels like you have to be probably, you know, within a couple of frames perfect, if not frame perfect. It's very difficult to do consistently in the NES game. But in this version, it's a normal thing. You'll oftentimes find yourself jumping backwards when you don't want to. You'll be trying to turn around and jump, but your character will end up just jumping backwards. So, and there we go. That is Castlevania for MS-DOS. We basically just go through the whole ending sequence. The ending sequence actually takes a little bit longer than it does in the NES version. I think the song, or the music tune here, will loop at least 3 times before the credits are actually fully over. And then afterwards, it goes to a high score table. So you can save your high scores in this. Also, a very interesting feature I didn't mention is that the game actually allows you to save your progress, and so you can reload your game whenever you want. So, a very convenient feature. Some computer games back in the day had that option, which is very nice. I'll sort of demonstrate that once we're done here. Now, an interesting thing about that is you can't continue in the game, though. I got a game over yesterday when I was practicing this on Twitch, and I expected it to pop up with a game over continue screen, but it didn't. It said start over or load or something like that. And so I either basically had a choice of reloading data or starting a full brand new game from the very beginning. And I said start over, and it took me all the way back to the very beginning of the game. So make sure you know to save in this game if you, for some odd, you know, crazy reason, decide to play this version. Control S within any level itself will automatically save the game for you, or it'll automatically save your progress. Also, if you want to quit, you can do Control Q, and then holding down Control. Man, I can't talk right now. Holding down Control and pressing other various keys on the keyboard will. Holding down the Control and pressing other various keys on the keyboard will do things like disable sound effects, disable music. And things like that. So let's go ahead and do continue a saved game. And as you can see, it just loads me right back up where I was, where I last saved it. So I actually had saved it at the very final stage here, just to get some practice in on Dracula. So let's go ahead and do Control Q. If you do Control Q, it comes back to this menu. It says start over or end. So let's go ahead and start a new game, just like so. Plays the intro again. And so if I wanted to, what I could do is, I don't know, just walk a little ways here, just like so, and we'll do Control S. So we just saved the game, and so let's do Control Q again, go to end, go to exit, and I was gonna demonstrate reloading the data, but that actually messed up. So if we go back into the game, it's probably gonna crash on me. Go ahead and select A for ad-lib. Okay, it works. This game is very inconsistent in Windows 95, by the way. One time I'll load it, it'll crash. Another time I'll load it, and it won't crash. It's very, very frustrating. So let's go ahead and go to continue save game. And it looks like it's just going to toss me right back in there right there. So I think what happens is that it actually reverts you to the last checkpoint. So let's see, let's go into the castle right here and see what happens. We'll save it within the castle. So Control S and then Control Q, and we'll do start over. We'll do continuous save game, and there we go. We're right back where we were. So this is just to demonstrate the loading system. So yeah, apparently it quick saves you at your last checkpoint. So our first checkpoint here is, you know, at the very start of the castle. So, but yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for me, guys. That is it. That is Castlevania for MS-DOS. Not really something I recommend, going out of your way to play, but if you're a huge Castlevania fan and you like playing all the various versions out there, it's a legitimate version that is mildly playable once you get the hang of it, and it's very interesting for Castlevania fans. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this playthrough. This is one I've been wanting to do for a very, very long time, because again, this was a game I actually played as a kid back in the mid-90s, on the various PCs I had back then. So it was great finally being able to show this off on YouTube. I'd like to eventually try to do the Commodore 64 version of the game, as well as the Commodore Amiga version of the game. So I'll probably have to run those in emulators. I don't have the original hardware for either of those systems, but that is definitely something I'd like to do in the future, as well as sort of complementary content for this version of the game. So, and I believe they were done by the same people as well, so they're very similar to one another. I believe the Amiga version still has all the choppy scrolling and whatnot, whereas the C64 version, a friend on Twitch was telling me that it's apparently got smooth scrolling on that version. So I'd be interested to see how everything else is in that version of the game. Collision detection and tricks and whatnot, and see if any other tricks from the NES version have translated over to that version. If you have any experience with those versions, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And but yeah, I hope to eventually check those out myself one day. So but yeah, guys, that's it. Yeah, if you're new to my channel, consider subscribing. I've got a lot of Let's Plays here and many more to come. Hopefully less rambly ones to come as well. For everyone already subbed, thank you for your continued support, and until the next one, take it easy.